And so hello everyone. Today we will listen to an interesting story taken from the Reddit. Enjoy everyone. I've never believed in anything supernatural. Not ghosts, not curses, not energies. I've always been the kind of person who looks for the most boring explanation first. Creaking pipes, bad wiring, old buildings settling. That's all it ever is. So when I took a job as a night security guard at a city archive, I wasn't even slightly worried. If anything, I thought it would be easy money. The archive was in an old pre-war building on the edge of town, with thick concrete walls, narrow windows, and long hallways that seemed to stretch farther at night than they did during the day. Everything smelled like dust and paper, the kind of smell that never really leaves your clothes. During my first shift, the supervisor, an older man named Victor, gave me a quick walkthrough. He wasn't unfriendly, just distant, like he didn't really want to be there. He handed me a ring of keys and pointed out the cameras, saying most of them worked, but not all. When I asked which ones didn't, he immediately said the south wing, adding that no one goes there. He said it too quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. Before leaving, he paused and told me that if I heard footsteps, I shouldn't check right away. I laughed and asked why, but he just shook his head and told me not to. The first night was completely uneventful. I sat in the security room watching old monitors, scrolling on my phone, and occasionally walking the halls just to stay awake. The building felt different at night, quieter and heavier, but nothing strange happened. No unusual sounds, no movement. Nothing that stood out. By the end of the shift, I was actually disappointed. The second night was when things began to change. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps. Slow, dull, steady footsteps, like someone walking in heavy shoes down a long hallway. At first, I assumed it was just the building making noise, but I was sitting completely still, and the sound didn't match anything I'd heard before. I checked the monitors, and every corridor was empty, yet the footsteps continued. They were coming from the south wing. I remembered Victor's warning, but curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down the hall. The farther I went, the worse the lighting became. Some lights flickered, others were completely dead. That's when I noticed the doors. Several of them were slightly open, even though I was certain I had closed them earlier. I stopped and listened, and the footsteps suddenly stopped, leaving behind a silence that felt deliberate, as if whatever had been making the sound knew I was there. I stood there for a few seconds, then turned back, telling myself I'd deal with it later. By the third night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the footsteps returned, closer than before. I immediately checked the monitors and saw that one of the cameras in the south wing, which had previously been offline, was now working. The feed showed an empty corridor, but the sound of footsteps matched the view perfectly, as if someone invisible was walking through it. I leaned closer, trying to catch any movement, but there was nothing. Then, at the end of the hallway, a door slowly opened on its own without making a sound. The footsteps stopped, and the camera feed cut to black. I sat there for a while, staring at the screen, before eventually deciding to go check. When I reached the south wing, the air felt different, dry and stale, like a place that had been sealed off for years. The doors were open again, just like before, except for one at the end of the hallway, which was wide open. It was the same door I had seen on the camera. Inside the room were shelves filled with old files and boxers. But in the center stood a wooden chair that I was certain hadn't been there before. I stepped inside cautiously, and almost immediately I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. The sound continued, moving around me in a slow circle, always just out of reach. I swept the flashlight across the room again and again, but there was nothing to see. I backed out of the room, shut the door, and didn't return for the rest of the night. The next morning, I confronted Victor and told him that someone was in the south wing. He denied it immediately, insisting it was just the building making noise, that doors opened because of drafts, that I was imagining things. But when I mentioned the chair, he paused briefly and quietly admitted that there shouldn't be a chair there. That was the first time he seemed genuinely unsettled. I almost quit then, but instead I came back for one more shift. That night, at 1:47 a.m., every camera in the building glitched at the same time, filling the screens with static before returning one by one, all except for the south wing. The footsteps started again, but this time they were faster, almost like someone running. Then there was a knock on the door to the security room. One sharp knock, then another, then a third. I hesitated before walking to the door and asking who was there, but no one answered. When I opened it, the hallway was empty, but the dusty floor showed clear footprints leading straight to the door. They stopped abruptly at the threshold, as if whoever made them had simply disappeared. I quit that same morning without notice. A few days later, Victor called me and asked if I had told anyone about what happened. I said no, and he sounded relieved. When I pressed him for answers, he told me that the south wing used to be a reading room, and that there was a man who came there every night. When I asked what happened to him, Victor said the man had died there. I asked how, but after a long pause, he only said that the man never left, and then he hung up. I tried to put it out of my mind, but about a week later I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was an old black and white photograph of the archive's south wing. The room was the same one I had entered, with the chair placed in the center. Someone was sitting on it, their face blurred beyond recognition, but clearly turned toward the camera. At first, that was all I noticed, but then I looked closer and saw a second figure standing behind the chair. This one was clear, sharp, unmistakable. It was me, wearing the same uniform from the archive, standing there as if I had always been part of that room. Thank you all for watching, and please like and share your stories in the comments.